Hey guys, welcome back to the show. This is of course Full Power Pellic and the ultimate guide to structure blocks for Bedrock version. So, let's get on with it. So to start off with, basically we are in one of the most fantastic worlds in front of the most fantastic structure, which is of course the Statue of Hermides, and that means of course we are in Hermitcraft World Season 6. So, okay, that's a tree. So how the structure blocks all work is actually quite simple, and I'm going to be using it on this structure here so that you guys can get a bit of an idea. So generally I recommend starting off with pretty much one of the corners of the area. You'll notice in Bedrock version that we get these lines here. They're actually really useful. They'll basically show you the structure that you've currently selected. You'll get them in Java as well. But what you also get is actually if you go inside it, so use your use button or right click if you're on a computer, then you'll basically be able to see the structure that you've selected. Now, what we have on the left hand side here is some different controls. So we have 4 different modes. So we have save, obviously save something, load something obviously, corner, and then 3D export. Now, let's go through the save first of all, because that's the most interesting. So first of all, the structure name, we're going to just call it anything. So in this case, I'm just going to call it GG. Now this is case sensitive. So if you do an uppercase G, then basically you need to make sure that you type uppercase G's when you go to load it. But what we're going to do is just basically skate over that. Just make sure that you remember the name, because there's no list of names or anything like that in the game. So you really just have to remember it. It really takes you back to the old school days. On the right hand side here, obviously we do have the structure that we've currently selected. And what we have is also the size and the offset. Aside from that, we've got a detect mode, which I'll explain in a moment. And we'll also have whether or not we want to include entities or not, and whether or not we want to remove the blocks or not. And then you've got this option here, which is kind of like save to memory or save to disk. I've tried the save to disk many times. I don't seem to get it to work very well, so I'm not really sure what that deal is. But aside from that, show bounding box is just showing the bounding box. So let's go with size. So obviously you can just max this out. You'll find that it won't actually go out to the maximum size. So if I, for instance, were to basically set this to its maximums, at the moment in the current beta that it's letting me sort of choose, it's allowing me 64 by X, 64 by Z, and Y coordinate is basically your vertical coordinates. So I can actually shrink this down quite a bit just by changing the numbers manually, and you'll notice of course it actually gets quite smaller. Now aside from that, you actually also have an offset. So how that works is basically, let's say for instance we want to get rid of the -1 Y offset, and let's change it to 10. So there you go. What you've noticed is that the whole thing, well, the whole box has sort of moved up vertically. So if I want to move it back down, I just set it to 0 and it moves back down vertically. So you kind of get the idea. I'll show you in the real game as well as to what it looks like. So the box no longer starts at the bottom of this block, and it's now starting just basically up there, as you can see. So very interesting sort of stuff. Load is basically the next function that we have. So loading is quite simple. Once you've chosen to save whatever you want to save, so let's expand this a little bit so that I can capture the whole thing, because I want to make sure that I get the whole thing with this. And let's just go 0. Let's go up to about 90. It sometimes requires a bit of guessing. It's not like it's an exact science all the time. Sometimes it is a bit of guessing, but you know, at least if you've got it in the right sort of location, that's the main thing. So I'm pretty happy with that. I'm just going to hit the save button, and we should be good with that now. So what we're going to do is I'm going to basically show you guys the loading function. It's much the same. If we just jump over to somewhere like Scar's place over here, all that you would have to do is basically put one down, right click on it and choose load. And now you can choose where the actual offset is. So for instance, if you wanted it a block or two higher than how it was before, you can basically again move the whole box. And to load it, just make sure that you put in the name and hit the load button, and the whole thing slowly loads. And now we should have a second one here, a little bit higher than the first one. So quite simple so far, nothing sort of too crazy. Now it does get a little bit more complicated in a second. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to this time, instead of actually having the coordinates in, we're going to get rid of that, and we're going to put in another one. But this time, I'm just going to put another block over, let's say, just over here. And I'm going to choose for this one to be a corner block. And I'll call it, let's say, HH. So we're going to go with the structure HH. And what we're going to do is go back to the original one now. And it will have the save mode. Just going to choose to call it HH. And we'll go detect. And what it's done is automatically detected where the corner block is, and as you can see, it's now gone exactly to where that corner is. So pretty useful function. This is a new one for Bedrock version, so if you haven't seen that before, don't be too surprised. It has been in Java for a long time, but basically, yeah, it's just something new to Bedrock that is a really cool function. Now, the last function that we have here is the supremely coolest. You see, what this is we're going to obviously save this in a moment. Let's make sure that we've got our dimensions correct though. So let's go with something like this so that we've got, again, the statue of Hermes. And what we're going to do is, I'm just going to make sure that we save it as GG. You don't really have to save it, but what we can do here is go down to 3D export. So this is where it gets very cool. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to, again, have the same sort of controls. And then once we're happy with where it is, we can go export. And you may or may not see this on your screen at the moment. I don't think that you do. Hang on a sec. Let me fix up the video so that you guys can see what I'm seeing. Okay, so what you can see now is basically I have the option of saving something as a GLB file to my desktop. So you're probably going to get some sort of option on your phone, somewhat similar, where you will save it to your files. Same thing with Xbox, PlayStation, all of those. But what we can do is once we export it, we can basically go out of Minecraft. And what we can do is somewhere on my desktop will now be the GGGRB file. And on a Windows computer, obviously you have a native 3D viewer. And what we have is actually the statue of Hermes. So this is basically now a 3D model. So you could, say for instance, import this into another game or something like that if you really wanted to. Basically how this now exists is something that you could use in, for instance, let's say Blender. Let's grab Blender for a second. And I'll just go general, get rid of that. And we just want to go import. And you'll have an option for GLB files. Just go desktop. We'll import that. Now, it doesn't always work perfectly between different things, but as you can see, basically, we've now got the statue of Hermes directly in Blender. If it lets me sort of work with it, maybe. Yes, there we go. We eventually got it. So I can even render, say for instance, images of this. So let's say we just want to grab a camera. I don't really work with Blender too much. You have to forgive me this a little bit. So let's chuck in a camera, and where's my camera? There's my camera. Okay, this thing's massive. All right, let's give it a few moments, and then I'll see if I can find a good sort of image. Okay, so that's, let's say for instance, we'll go with that sort of a photo. And yeah, it's got a bit of an artistic sort of merit to it. So if, for instance, I wanted to render the photo, quite simple. In fact, let's add a bit of sun. Let's do this a little bit more properly. Where is our sun? Our sun is here. So let's just grab this and let's rotate it probably, just rotate. Why can I not rotate the sun? Oh, bollocks. Okay, let's get a new sun. Okay, so that should give us a pretty good sort of start as a light source. This isn't a Blender tutorial, of course, so you have to forgive me being a fairly sort of quick sort of run through. But let's get a bit of an idea as to what that's looking like. Yeah, it could probably do with a lot more sun. Let's just add a lot of zeros. Let's try from there. Oh, what? Still nothing? Okay, normally the zeros do a lot of stuff. And more zeros are needed. Let's just go all the way up to, let's try 5,000. 5,000 seems like it should be pretty good. So we'll go render image. Okay, there we go. So now we're starting to get ourselves a bit of an awesome sort of photo. So that is a pretty cool thing. You gotta admit that we can make desktop wallpaper pictures and things like that directly out of Minecraft. Very useful for creators. But aside from that, there's other things that we can actually do with 3D model files. Okay, so what we're going to do now is I found that this is the best possible way, and we're going to grab the GLB file and convert it to an STL file. Now, you should in theory be able to actually do this without having to convert it. I've found that converting it works better. That's just me basically just, you know, choosing what I sort of think. But I think that actually doing a conversion to the STL file works best for this, and you're going to see why in a moment. Okay, so now that we've got our file downloaded, saved, and all that stuff, what I'm going to do is open up another program called Cura. Now, what Cura is an interesting slicing program. So what slicing is it can take a 3D model and then divide it into layers and then slowly have those layers be built. Now, the reason why you would want to do something along these lines is basically because you could do them with, say, a milling machine, or you could use it for something like a 3D printer. So what we have here is basically my Ender 3 3D printer that we have. And if we just basically choose to open and download wherever that is, and we'll open that file, then yeah, it'll get angry with me. It will probably get angry. And what am I looking at here? This makes no sense. Hang on, what's going? Oh, right, the whole thing's actually on an angle. Let's fix that up, shall we? Okay, let's just go like that. And let's set the starting location to 0 and 0. You'll get used to the X, Y, Z coordinates because everything uses them. Yeah, it's just the way that life works, unfortunately, is that as soon as you go into anything, X, Y, and Z is basically everything that you get. So what I'll do is let's choose something random. So let's have a raft. Yeah, I want a raft. We want tree structure support. That should be pretty cool. Surface mode, yeah, that should be fine. Let's see if this slices it. So hopefully this should basically now convert the whole model into something that you can even 3D print. So it just takes a little bit of time, even on my PC, which is an absolute beast. It, yeah, it's definitely going to take some time, unfortunately, but we'll see how this goes. And the other thing you got to remember is that 3D printers generally don't print in more than one color. So you'd have to still paint it yourself. But having a look, it looks like we've got a pretty good structure support that's all existing around the model. What this is basically, well, plastic warps as it's hot, so it needs supports and things like that when it prints. But aside from that, it's all looking pretty good. So what I should be able to do is in 21 hours time, have that all printed out, and we should have our very own real life version of the Statue of Hermides. Okay, and now we are back in the real world. Hello guys, wherever you are. I can sort of see my hand, which is completely different to seeing my hand in Minecraft. But what we have down here is basically just a very simple sort of 3D printer. So the process is pretty much straightforward. So it's doing something. Really doing something? I don't know why it's thought that it's auto-leveled at such a height. What is going on here? Okay, well it's having problems. But hopefully I can get this done and it should be pretty good. Okay, so we have finally got our model all done, and this is me editing, so basically, yeah, this is probably the part that you just saw a few moments ago, but we finally have our statue, and unfortunately, there's a bit of a complication. You see, what's happened is that I decided to go back and cut down the slicing program to do it in 8 hours, at the cost of quality. But it's nothing compared to this. So it hasn't been sanded off yet or anything like that. It's had most of the supports taken away. But what we have is obviously we're missing the torch that usually goes here. I had to take that off because of where the supports were and that sort of thing. But as you may notice up here, there's a bit of a problem. You see, what the problem is these crown things, and I obviously completely blame Xisuma for doing this, because, you know, I'm going to blame him completely because it's all his fault. No, I'm kidding. It's fine. It's not really too big a thing. But it's just a slight difference between Minecraft and the real world. You see, how these actually are in Minecraft is blocks that are directly and angled towards each other. So if we go back some time ago and probably have a look at that model file, wherever that was. I'm literally taping off a computer screen here. That's just slack. In fact, I could even take this image. So if you see up here, what we have is those blocks are directly and angled towards each other. And in Minecraft, that's not really too big of a problem because basically, yeah, things can float in Minecraft. It's a little bit of unrealism, but you know, that's how it works. Things can float in Minecraft. However, in the real world, things don't float. And I completely overlooked it, which is just, I don't know, a goofy moment of myself. But there we go. You can print directly out of Minecraft. The rest of it's looking pretty good, actually. Of course, you need to sand it down and that sort of thing, and do smoothing, and that's all part of like 3D modeling and that sort of thing. There is some imperfections. I could have printed it a bit better, but it's more or less to show that it is actually possible, and of course to completely plagiarize out of Xisuma builds as much as I possibly can. So I'm sorry, Xisuma, if you do get to see this, that I completely nicked one of your builds for this, but yeah, it is very cool that now there is actually a statue of Hermes in the real world. In fact, I'm just going to take this one off because basically it just looks kind of like a unicorn right now, and it's a bit odd. Yes. But there's actually now a statue of Hermes in the real world. And I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you liked it, drop a like on the video, subscribe, and all that blah 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 stuff that you've heard a million times before. And yeah, this build is one of my favorites in Minecraft that I've actually seen. And in fact, this picture pretty much highlights some of the real beauty of it. I like it quite a lot. Don't obviously tell Xisuma that I actually made this video, because I don't know how he will take it. But catch you guys in the next one, and see you later. Bye.